really a pleasure and an honor as well to have been asked to speak. So obviously, as a convert, I'm asked a lot to share my experience, to why I converted. A lot of the time, I get that question obviously a lot, but also over the years, the decades, I've developed some experience, obviously, and I've seen a lot of situations. I've got a lot of convert friends, so that's helped me to, I hope, provide some support and guidance to the new converts that I encounter. I'm very familiar to the place that you're familiar with, Islamic Foundation, because we've had up until a couple of years ago an annual Ramadan retreat for converts and their families, which was for the children and for us like a second home, and with lovely, lovely memories and a safe place to be. And you'll understand a bit through my talk why converts need a safe place to be and a comfortable place to be, because there are challenges. There are challenges. So just going to just a sort of very brief introduction. Well, it's interesting thought I had is like, I really wonder if there is a statistic somewhere about how many converts there are in the UK. And obviously, it can only be a guesstimate. But there are different sources that include, there's a survey of over 250 mosques, also the census data from 2001, where people obviously declare their religion. And I suppose comparing the name, it's kind of obvious with maybe an English name or a Christian sounding name, and they put I'm Muslim, as identify as a Muslim, then a kind of cross reference, all that. But there's also similar conversion figures in Europe, which they've probably extrapolated for the UK. So the researchers kind of estimated that's about, or could be as many, probably more, 100,000 converts, individual converts in the UK. They reckon there's about 1,000, 2,000 conversions per year. So it's very, very broad, very vague, but it's quite a substantial number. And in a sense, it's kind of a bit deflating, because thinking, oh my God, so all these people, you know, how can we reach them? How can we support them? So it's really only on an individual basis, and if they come to you or come to the organizations that we can. But I'm sure there's loads and lots who happily do not need any support and any help, and we don't hear about them, and others who sadly may struggle. So to give you kind of an idea of why people would convert to Islam, there might be some converts in your group, I don't know, young converts, but there's the broad ranges of reasons, and I think you could say there are as many reasons to convert as there are converts. Everybody will have their own little story and reason, but they are broad themes, if you wish, that when you hear stories, you're like, oh yeah, it kind of resonates with me, similar to mine, maybe not in the details, but in the idea. So there's some quirky ones, like the one that I heard that I always found amazing, and when I went to Istanbul, I understood why. There was a brother who said that he was just simply traveling different places, and he ended up in Istanbul, and he heard the adhan. Had no idea what it was. I think it was the first time he went to a Muslim country. He just arrived from the airport, was in the center of Istanbul, and I heard the adhan. And if anybody's been in Turkey, you know how beautiful it is, the way they call out the adhan. And he just went to the mosque and asked what it was explained what it was, what it meant, and he converted there and there. Had no idea, did know really nothing about Islam. That story was back in the days when there was no internet. I can tell you that much. So, Sarah, sorry, but you will remember how it was if you didn't really have an interest in anything, or looking for books, or asking people, people you knew, you wouldn't really know much about any topic. It would be more effort. You'd have to research it properly, want to research it. So that was one of the kind of sweet reason. Many do it for marriage purposes in both sexes. So you'd have women converted to Islam to please the husband's family, and it's not necessarily an obligation. Sometimes they are told they have to, and sometimes they just want to be kind of the same faith as their partner, but understanding that it's not necessary and they might not practice straight away. Obviously, boys, they will be told, if you want to marry me, you've got to become a Muslim, full stop. There's no other choice for my family to accept you or for me to accept you. And often there's obviously encounters at work or university a lot of the time, sometimes a bit younger in college. There are people who just do it through not necessarily a person, or not directly through a person or circumstances like marriage or meeting someone necessarily, but more an intellectual pursuit. And that was me. I'll tell you more about that. Then there's more dramatic reasons as well, being saved from death or a terrible accident or terrible trauma. And that would be obviously the very famous story of Cat Stevens, Yusuf Islam. If you've never read his story, do research it. It's very easy to find online. It's a beautiful story, very impactful, very moving, which will resonate to a lot of you, and is related to one of the verses of the Quran. And also, interestingly, and that's the case of a very close friend of mine, they research Islam because they try to understand how their abusive husband can be like he is. Is there anywhere in Islam that tells them that they're allowed to treat them the way they treat them? And they research it, and they realize that their husband completely wrong. And they discover the beauty of Islam, and that gives them the strength to leave. So yes, there's some really amazing stories that you also have stories. You probably encountered them on social media. Christian missionaries who research Islam to be able to criticize Islam, and as they research it, they realize that they were completely mistaken and they convert. And that has happened to the very famous two right-wing racist, part of the racist political party of Holland, of the Netherlands. Van Doorn, one of them is called Van Doorn. Again, a very interesting story. So that is, I found that really, really interesting. So these are just examples. There are loads and loads and lots of, but these are kind of broad ideas for you to, okay, a lot as well, for your situation in college and university, it would be encountering and getting friends with another Muslim in school and university, and just being very curious. Oh, I've never met. My case was that I'd actually never really met Muslims before I went to university. So that opened, really opened my eyes. So a little bit more about me. I was born in Alsace, which is in the east of France. So not Strasbourg, but about 100 kilometers south of it, which is a smaller city, which interestingly enough is called the French Manchester. So there's a reason why I feel so comfortable here. I only discovered this a few years ago, but basically it's a mining town, which in the 80s had dwindling industries, textile as well, textile industry, and now it's completely changed itself with chemical and so. But to give you the background, because of mining and textile, it's like here in the part of Manchester I live in West Manchester, we've got a lot of Yemenis who came because of all the industries, and it's the same as over there in Alsace. You have a lot of Turks, you have a lot of immigrants, generally speaking, but you have a lot of Turks, a lot of Algerians especially, that came after the war. So it's not like I was never not aware of who Muslims were. I could see them in the streets generally, all the ladies. So I'll remind you, when I was a teenager, it was 1990, the 1980s. So no internet, no social media, only 3 channels on TV. So I would see things in the street. I remember being 10, seeing an old man praying on a grass verge outside a building. And this is very vivid image of him prostrating on the ground. And I was, yeah, quite mesmerized by this behavior. My parents took us to, at the time, Yugoslavia, which is now obviously 5 different countries. But basically we went to Sarajevo as well, and we visited the mosque there, we visited the souk, and I remember, again, I always say old people, because in those times, the practicing people, most religions, but even in Islam, in Europe especially, were the elderly. And the visibly practicing women with hijab would be the elderly. And no young woman with hijab, really. And they would be making wudu on the outside wudu. So there was like these little things when I was young. Then I worked in the summer, and I encountered a French, Moroccan young sister, my age, 18 something, 18, 19. And I struck a friendship because, I don't know, it was my nature. I've always been interested in other people, in their culture. And I was just saddened and shocked, and I talked to her because when she entered the office, she would have to remove her hijab and shake hands with all the male colleagues. That's the way people greet at the time. You had to shake everybody every morning. No, they were not like doing like the kiss on the cheek and everything, but nearly that, right? So she was very uncomfortable about that. And because I spoke to her, asked her questions, she invited me for lunch. She cooked a beautiful Moroccan couscous. And she talked to me about the hijab, about how beautiful it was, the reason behind it. She read me verses from the Quran. And I remember coming out, like I was, 19, floating, feeling like, oh, it's so beautiful, it's amazing. But if I want to be religious or practice, then I'll just be a Catholic. I'll just go into a church. That was my cultural religion. I did not know you could change religion at all at the time. And then I went to university, and that's when my world completely opened, because I was educated in a private Catholic school. So with maybe 1 or 2 Algerian girls who were not religious at all, from a very secular family. So there was no Islam to speak of. And I started then really meeting some practicing Muslims. At the time, I didn't really realize. I think people were a bit shy to talk about religion in France, especially at the time. So there was one in particular who was older than us. He was a mature student, and he was very intellectual, very philosophical, and he started talking about the broad ideas in life. And he never really told me about Islam, or he never told me about that he was praying or fasting or practicing particularly, but he always told me about La ilaha illallah. Just that. He focused on Tawheed. How, in his mind, it was, how can I bring this girl who seems to be really interested in everything, seems to have a good heart, who's curious about things and spiritual. Like I suppose, yeah, I was searching somehow without realizing. So that's why I was asking lots of questions. And that's all he focused on, just Tawheed. And I did tell him, I said, yeah, this is really good. Okay, yeah, I think if I believe in God, like for sure, I'm convinced God exists, then, I'll stay Catholic. And I remember he had a little smile. Probably knew, once you start discovering the Quran, I don't think you'll be able to, but patience. He was very patient, because after that I left university and kind of didn't really keep it much in touch. Went to London, forgot about it all. But there was a moment where he told me, if you really want to know that God exists, all you have to do is to ask him to prove you that he exists. And he's all powerful, so you can ask anything. You don't feel like there's anything that can be too small for him, or difficult. All right, okay. So I was one evening at a festival, rock festival, similar to Glastonbury, and I was the driver, and the car was parked about half an hour walk from the festival place venue, and it was very late, and we were like a big group, but I'd lost part of the group I was with, including the person who had my car keys in the pocket. Remember, 1980s, no mobile phone, no way of contacting each other, right? So I told my friend, this is like a disaster. How are we going to, because we didn't know where would we meet again? We just vaguely said maybe, at the very end of the festival, probably 1 o'clock a.m. or something, we'll meet, we'll see you at such a place. But it was just a vague thing. And I thought, I just remembered that thing that guy had told me months ago, probably even a couple of years before. So, that's the time to test. And I took out this sort of, in my head, like a magic wand. I was like, oh, I'm going to try my magic wand. Let's see if God exists. So I made this dua. I said, oh God, if you exist, you're all powerful and you can do whatever you want. So now I want to be able to find my friends, but I'm not going to make it easy for you. No, seriously, I was talking like this in my head. Seriously, I'm not going to make it easy for you. I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to count until 3. And I'm going to open my eyes and I want my friends right in front of me. I'm not going to make it like, oh, at some point, I want to find them, make it all end well. No, it was now. At this very second, I'm not going to wait. If you're all powerful, you can do it. And I remember having like goosebumps, sorry, and just feeling a bit like, interestingly, I thought, what if it doesn't work? Because if it didn't work, that would be proving that God didn't exist. And so I would have to, I would not have answers to a lot of questions. So it's interesting because looking back, I already had belief, but I didn't know it. So I did that. My heart was pounding because it was really a life-changing moment. I knew from then on, if this was going to be happening the way I wanted it, I'd have to do something. I'd have to change. I'd have to act upon it. And so I close my eyes and I count to 3. And I open my eyes and the crowd parts and my friends are right in front of me. And wow, okay, that is kind of scary. So I took my wand out to get that. It's working. And I started asking, oh, I want to, because obviously it was end of the night. I was really tired. I had to drive for another hour. I said, I want to feel like I'm full of energy, super clear, super focused, and I can drive back without even feeling the slightest bit of tiredness. And bam, complete clarity. Just like that. It was like a veil had been removed. And I was like in the middle of the afternoon, fully rested. And exactly like the story of Yusuf Islam, I completely forgot about it afterwards. For another 3 years. For another 3 years. So it took me that long for things to decant and seep in. So back to London, I work, start to be disillusioned with nightlife, with work life, with behavior in, among colleagues, especially when you're a single woman, public relations, etc. It was just not very nice. And not, I couldn't see this going anywhere very productive. And I knew one thing, I wanted to find a lifelong partner, be settled, have children. That was my life goal. And no, everyone was very vain, very hard to find someone you could trust, etc. So that at the same time, I kind of reconnected with that brother from France, and he started talking to me about, I shared in my disappointments. I went to Vietnam with my brother backpacking. I came back with images of people who had such nur, although they're not Muslims, but they had a kind of nur in themselves. They had like they were at peace with themselves. They were living sometimes with very little in the mountains, and I thought, how can I make my life like this? And at the same time, always interested in politics, like you all are at the time. Same situation in Palestine, same situation in Gaza, same oppression already. As we know, it's not new. 1980s, 1990s, and wars, etc. And I discussed political issues with him, and he said, I'll tell you how the Jews are described in the Quran. And he read me passages of the Quran. I'll explain to you why we're in this situation. Told me about the story from the prophets, from the whole history of the Holy Land. I'll tell you why I believe the Quran is the word of God. And all of a sudden I asked him, I said, hold on a minute. Do you actually pray 5 times a day? Because by then I knew a bit more. I said, yeah, of course. Do you fast as well? Yeah, of course. So I never realized. I never thought. But afterwards, I realized this guy, I find, so like his mind is so good, and so he's convinced about everything. He's strong in his beliefs. He humiliates himself 5 times a day by prostrating on the ground, putting his head on the ground. If he does this can only be the truth, because he wouldn't do it otherwise. It can only be the truth. And I said, send me a Quran. And I sent me a Quran, and I never talked to any other Muslim by then. I opened it randomly, and it said, place your trust in Allah, because Allah is the best of protector. Hasbi Allah, wa ni'mal wakil. And that's it. The rest is history. A month later, I had started fasting in Ramadan by myself, because I'd heard in the news that it had started. I read in the Quran, it's from dawn to dusk, so I did dawn to dusk. And that was it. From the first day, I just couldn't eat. It just happened like that. And then I met a lovely woman in the bus who was reading a book on how to read the Quran. And I thought, it's London, I can ask her a question. She's not going to be shocked. It turned out to be, she was newly convert, and she brought me to this community, which that was actually, by the way, the answer on my other dua in Ramadan, the night before, when I just prayed to Allah. I said, I'm lost. I think I'm doing this just to impress this guy. I want to be as intelligent as him. Oh, whatever it is, it doesn't seem like that's not for me. What is this shaitan playing with my mind already? I said, I want to meet someone like me and a family who can nurture me. And I met a girl who was like me. She was white. She was a convert. She was my age. And she introduced me to a beautiful, big family who took care of me and nurtured me. And I took my Shahada with them. And that was it. But it took 8 years from the first months in university, when I started talking about meaning of life and these big things, and Islam, Tawheed, and then Islam. 8 years. But he never stopped praying as well. He saw something in me. Alhamdulillah, may he be blessed. He's got his family in France, etc. And not really in contact with him much, but I knew his sisters, etc. But this is all it takes: someone to see something in you and believe that you can be, you can change. So that's my kind of summarized story. Interestingly, yesterday, or today actually, an interview I gave to a local friend of mine who's got a small podcast. She released it on Spotify. So if you want to hear a little bit more, it's called Tasha Tales. So if you just search Spotify, Tasha Tales, and she's called Natasha. So it's kind of into brackets. So if you want to hear a bit more, Tasha's Tale, yeah. I think I may have given a few more details about other things in France, etc. But yeah, it's this is my story. The other question I get asked, and every convert get asked, is how did your family react? Because obviously I'm not the same anymore. And I used to say, oh, I'm the same, I'm not changing. But yeah, you do change. Okay, I went to see my parents, and for a few months without telling them why, I'm not really drinking wine anymore. I'm just going through this kind of, diet or whatever. I'm not eating meat anymore. In the UK, we have the mad cow disease. Do you remember, Sarah, the mad cow disease? So that was a good excuse that I'm not eating meat anymore, especially not beef. Because I just didn't know. I could have eaten the chicken and the beef at the time. It was okay. But I just didn't feel strong enough. I didn't know enough. I was fearing their reaction. So it took me about 9 months to tell them, and I had to. Allah put me in that situation because I was there in the winter, Christmas time, when it was the beginning of Ramadan, and I didn't want to miss Ramadan, so I had to tell them. And it was not easy because my parents, like many French people, are traumatized by religion. So that's another story, another time. But historically, there's a lot of trauma with religion in France, and so they were just very worried. Now, obviously, over time, 27 years later, marriage, etc., they have said that they can see it has made me a much calmer, confident, focused person than I was before. So they can see the benefits. Yeah, they can see the benefits. I'm trying to be a better daughter. It's not always easy, but I'm trying to convey the values of Islam through my behavior. So that's my story. I don't know if there's any time for questions afterwards, but I'm happy to share more if needed. But it gives you a flavor of what can go through someone's mind that you may encounter in university from the moment they may start to ask questions. And it may be that sometimes people just ask questions to be polite. Nowadays, I would say some people ask questions to show that they are inclusive and they're not racist or Islamophobic because they don't want to be seen as such, but they're not particularly interested in the answer. My mom used to ask questions to trip us, and we would just answer the question in a very calm, collected, intellectual, rational manner, and said, "Oh, you won't convince me, and you won't convert me anyway." So like, no, we're just answering your question. It's okay. So it can be sometimes. It depends what the reason why people ask you questions, and if they have a chip on the shoulder, the reaction might be a bit different, depending. But all I remember, and that goes back to the dua, is we're going to go into what converts need as support and etc. But the biggest thing that they need is friendship. Is just people to take them under their wings as friends, as close friends, and to show them the ropes, because it's a completely different culture. There are norms, etiquette, unspoken rules that for you are very familiar. You're very familiar with them. You don't even have to think about them. Removing your shoes when you enter a house, washing yourself in the toilet, shaving, things like this. No idea before. No idea about these things. Washing Fridays, washing ghusl at different times. So many different things. So friendship is, if you have a good, close relationship with someone, then they will feel comfortable to ask all of these bit embarrassing questions, but they are necessary to, to be asked, to be able to learn and learn. Obviously, now you can also give them books and stuff, but personal relationship is always not always, but often a better way of conveying and helping someone through change. So, for instance, the sort of support that you could encounter in your situation at university or college, if, say, a friend seems to be going towards that route, to conversion. And they've already said, I've been researching Islam and I've read the Quran, everything, and I really would like to take a Shahada. So there'll be little things that they will need, like, where did they go? Who did they talk to? Who did they ask? Should they go to a mosque? No, they don't have to go to a mosque. Should it be an imam? No, it doesn't have to be an imam. It can be any Muslim and a witness, 2 witnesses taking the shahada of someone. Obviously, if they want to have the event in a mosque and make it a big thing out of it and everything, or later they can go and get a certificate. It's always recommended because it's useful if death should happen, or if they want to go to Hajj or Umrah. So there's little things like this. Also, as I said, they will need help on how to make ghusl just before taking the shahada, or at least tell them just to have a shower. How to make wudu, to do their first prayer. How to behave in a mosque, what's expected of them. And also, would they have any non-Muslim family members or friends who would like to attend? That has happened many times. That we had in our mosque here and in Didsbury Mosque as well. Remember, mothers especially wanting to attend their daughter's conversion event, which is very nice. And sometimes it's because obviously they want to see, who are these people? Where is my daughter going? Snooping, you know. But also sometimes just genuinely, I'm very happy for my daughter, my son's a daughter because there's a situation, but could be son, for my child to do it. I just want to be there for that big event of theirs that's happened. So these are things that you'd have to think about. Post-conversion, so immediately after the conversion, that is the sort of few days, few weeks afterwards, they'll need help practically, you know, for anything that's related to ibadah. So how to pray, what are the movements, how to read an Arabic transliteration. Can they do any dua, anything in English? Yes, they can. They can do the whole prayer in English at the beginning if they want to. And remember, Arabic, yes, Arabic is a special language. It's the language of the Quran. It's the language of our Prophet ﷺ, but it's also the language they used to speak. So the Prophet ﷺ was talking to the people in their own language. You've got to use the language of the persons or, you know, people who are around you, who ask you the question and who are starting to learn. So yes, they can read everything in English at the very beginning, while encouraging them to read the transliteration as much as possible, as soon as possible, to get more and more familiar. One of the blessings I had in my conversion is that the group that I was introduced to was not just a family, it was a Sufi group. And they did dhikr every Thursday night and also on Sundays. And part of that dhikr was to recite Ayatul Kursi, the 3 Quls, and other names of Allah after every single prayer and during lengthy dhikr sessions. And for reasons I won't get into, in the end, after 6 months, I decided I wanted to just leave and be a mainstream Muslim, and they were not attending mosques and things, and there were other things that I disagreed with after getting more knowledge, but with that particular group. But what I'm saying is that reciting aloud with someone else is the best way of learning something new. So that's something that you may want to consider. Shall I sit with you? I'll recite the prayer, and then you stand next to me. I'll recite it a bit and more aloud, even if it's dhuhr. You whisper it more loudly so they can hear, and they can hear what you're saying. They can hear there's something said in the rakah. They can hear there's something said in sajda, etc. So these are kind of things you can do as a friend. Also, just the everyday Arabic terms. Alhamdulillah, subhanallah, mashallah. What's all this? You know, I was given like I can't remember, 4 or 5 pages, both sides, with loads of things, all the basic surah and the terms. Alhamdulillah, what is it? It was really useful, but it was a bit overwhelming. I was like, oh my God, I need to learn all this. No, these are things that come as you know, slowly. Long term, this is the hardest, and this is something that even we adult here, even who provide some form of semi-official convert care in our local mosque and around here. The long-term support is the hardest. And often converts complain that once the sort of honeymoon period has passed, they found themselves quite alone, because everybody goes back to their, you know, daily life. And it's something that I'm guilty of as well. I'm trying to keep in touch with the converts that say, we had last year at Ramadan. During Ramadan, I had warned her, actually, that particular sister said, she's from my locality. And she said, oh, so, you know, so nice, all these dinners. And I said, yeah, I just have to warn you. Unfortunately, and this is not that we don't want to, but life takes over. Once Ramadan is over, we have very little time for social interaction. Everybody is so busy with life, with children, work, studies, everything. So enjoy it while it lasts. Ramadan is a special time. So be aware of that. Be honest with your, you know, what you can do, what you can't do, and also surround yourself with other people who you can take turns, you know, if you have someone you want to support. You don't have to do everything yourself. So basically, it's something that obviously you have the blessing of ISB, so you can, or ISOCs, or some other societies, it may be in college, who can help you. So you're not completely alone. Other situations you might have, but I'm not going to go into details, and that is more maybe if they're more adult, but it can still happen with younger ones, is they might have financial issues, family issues, they might be rejected, they might be disowned, shunned, completely alone, homeless due to their conversion. I will tell you what you can do in that situation. There might be legal issues as well. They might face divorce. They might face their own children be taken away from them by their former partner because of their conversion, or the parents, their own parents, especially when there are children already present. They might have issues with their own children who may be old enough and refuse to be Muslim, refuse their parent to become a Muslim, and the new situation. And that can cause a lot of difficulty and trauma as well. So these are kind of challenges, some of the challenges that you can find. One of the things that I find, I'm going to try and be very brief, but it's really important to mention, when especially a woman, but men as well, converts, one of the first thing, literally within days, you hear is, oh, now you need to get married. And there have been absolutely disastrous marriages due to that, because the only thing that the well-meaning Muslim wants is like, it's half your religion, you know, it's, you're not going to be alone. Yeah, that's true, it can support, but the match is absolutely not the right one. So either because they're too young, they don't know what they want, or they just say yes because they feel they shouldn't say no, because they don't know the etiquette and what is allowed and not allowed. So that's one thing you can be on the lookout. It won't come from you necessarily, but from someone else. Oh, I've been offered to get married. You can say, I think it's a little bit early. How long have you known that person? Who is that person? Should maybe one of our mentors meet that person and do some investigation? Don't get into it too quickly. Very important, and that can happen to your age group. And don't be too quick and enforce the rules. You should wear hijab, you should grow a beard, you should pray 5 times a day, you should do this, you must fast. There's time. Prophet ﷺ took a long time to introduce all of the different stages of ibadah, not all in one day. Years and years and years and years. So remember that. Don't talk too much about what's haram. Can't wear makeup, can't wear nail varnish, can't visit family for Christmas, can't give gifts, can't receive gifts, can't eat their food. It's just too much. Okay, just put your Christmas tree for your son in your flat. It's okay. You've done this for so many years, for 10 years. You're not going to stop now that you're a Muslim. Ease things, you know, into the family. Don't stop visiting your family at Christmas time. It's okay. It'll come. It's okay if they drink alcohol. You know, just take it easy. slowly, gradually. There's no rush in anything. And that leads me to the final point, which is why people leave Islam. And often it is linked to what's happened before, the challenges that were mishandled. And a lot of the time, unfortunately, women leave Islam because of abusive relationships. So again, you can be on the lookout for signs of that in your friends who are already married. That's for anyone anyway, not just convert, but that would lead, a lot of the time could lead them to leave Islam. I have many sad stories, unfortunately, where they throw the baby out with the bathwater. And also sometimes the reason why they leave Islam is lack of understanding of some of the more complex issues, bad translation of the Quran, not asking a variety of Muslims for better explanations, being stuck in a particular vision, understanding, application of Islam, not understanding that there are broad, there's ikhtilaf, there's different opinions, or be too strict too soon, too many impositions, and it just becomes overwhelming and stifling, and no support from local community, loneliness, otherness, that's too hard to bear. So it's lots and lots of reasons, but these are some that I've encountered. Support for you who support a new Muslim. Basically, you don't do it alone, okay? You have loads of good organizations. I'm going to mention 3. The first one is convertmuslimfoundation.org.uk. The second one, and I have an offshoot called convertcare.org, which is to help those who care for converts. So there's training, there's support, there's resources. So that's from Auntie Batul Atoma, who was based at the Islamic Foundation until a few years ago. SolaceUK.org is a very good one for female converts. And New Beginnings, beginnings.org.uk. So I'm sure Auntie Sarah and others will know how to put all these resources available for you. Many mosques now, especially the big ones in all the big cities, will have provision for converts support. If you need to take them to an imam for advice or for conversion or for answer a question, or to imam or knowledgeable person, just make sure you know that person. That would be someone you would ask yourself questions to. Don't just send them, oh, there's a mosque, here it is. Just go and ask a question, because they might not have the question that the answer that they should really be having. That's it for my talk. I hope it was interesting. It opened your mind to this. You may have already some friends who are converts, so maybe that was familiar to you.